Hey, welcome to Anime What Ifs. This is part 16 of What If Naruto Married Temari.
Despite his confident words, Naruto was apprehensive as he faced down the three remaining trespassers. The odds were still against him, and their body language told him he wasn't going to get another free shot like the corpse at his feet had given him. When the black marks spread across their bodies, he mentally cursed. He truly hated that seal, and his experience with Sasuke told him that they were now much stronger than before. "You fucking piece of trash, you're gonna pay for that." The kunoichi spat as she jumped back into the trees, raising a flute to her lips.
"Yeah, let's see how you like us when we've powered up."
The one with multiple arms followed after her.
Orochimaru-sama said we have to bring you back alive, trash. The last one said as he dropped into a taijutsu stance. He never said we had to bring you back in one piece. I'm going to enjoy playing with you.
Naruto shifted nervously and remembered what Tsunade told him after the fight with Han. Sliding closer to Reynard, Naruto spoke to the fox without taking his eyes from the sound shinobi.
"Reynard," he said quietly so they wouldn't overhear. "Fall back to the house and have the girls send an alert.
Those seals they're using are really bad news.
We need help."
When Reynard turned and darted into the bushes, Naruto rushed forward, flipping his kodachi around to hold it against the length of his arm one-handed. Dropping low, he whipped the blade at the gray-haired shinobi's knees, forcing his opponent to jump. Gaining momentum by continuing to spin, he dropped his other hand to the kodachi's handle and slashed up, intending to bisect his mid-air adversary. The strike was deflected by a kunai-wielding arm that grew from his leg, throwing Naruto off balance. Refusing to lose his grip on his kodachi, Naruto rolled forward as the man landed, then was forced to quickly flip back to avoid a golden arrow that almost took his head off. He'd barely regained his balance from the flip when the gray-haired man came flying in with a roundhouse kick. Slapping the foot down with his blade, Naruto tried to counter but was hit by two other legs, throwing him back against a tree. Ducking under a punch, this time with three arms, Naruto rolled forward past the man before he planted his foot and twisted his body to drive his kodachi through the gray-haired man's skull. This attack was parried by a large, green-covered figure that smashed the attack aside with a giant club. Two more crashed to the ground near him, boxing him in. Cursing, Naruto quickly drew and threw a Hiraishin kunai in the direction of the house. Desperately backpedaling and blocking with his kodachi, Naruto barely avoided being skewered by the spikes the second of the large figures used as a weapon. Feeling the Hiraishin kunai stop moving, Naruto took a brief moment to focus, then flashed away from his opponents. Reappearing about 40 yards from the fight, Naruto yanked the kunai free from the tree, then disappeared into the nearby treetops.
Leaning against the trunk, Naruto panted, trying to catch his breath. In the distance, he heard the kunoichi taunting her teammate. "Bah, you fucking suck, Sakan. That brat almost got you twice. Kiss my ass, Tayuya." "Sakan," by the sound of it, the gray-haired one retorted. "Kidamaru, he didn't go far. Find him." This really sucks, Naruto thought mentally, running through his inventory. Since the fight with Han, he always carried some gear in the seals of his clothes, but he wasn't prepared for something like this. Especially when they work together like that and outnumber me. Freezing at that thought, Naruto almost smacked himself. I'm so stupid sometimes, since when am I ever outnumbered? A soft rustling in the leaves near him caused Naruto to duck just as a spider the size of Gaara's gourd flew over his head and landed against the tree trunk behind him. Slashing his kodachi through the spider, Naruto noticed a lot of movement in the trees nearby. Creating a handful of clones to preserve his chakra, Naruto began to hunt the spiders through the treetops. I hope Reynard brings me some backup soon. Temari, Sakura, Ino, Hinata and Tenten were sitting at the kitchen table playing ninja poker, more accurately given it was ninja poker cheating, when Reynard crashed into the room. "Apologies, Temari-sama." The tired fox panted. "Naruto-sama is engaged in battle and sent me to acquire reinforcements." Temari narrowed her eyes as she stood and grabbed her fan from its place on the wall behind her. "Who and how many?" "I do not know, Temari-sama." The fox admitted. Naruto-sama seemed to know them and he killed the first one to attack. He said that we would need help because the seals they used were bad news. Temari jerked the tablecloth from the table, revealing a large seal on the wood. Sound Nin. She snarled. Probably those sound 4 assholes if they all have curse seals. Pushing chakra into the seal, a large amount of weaponry appeared on the table. Sakura, you're in no condition to fight, so go warn the Hokage. When Sakura nodded shakily and dashed out the door, Temari turned her gaze on the remaining kunoichi. Alright girls, load up. We have to go save my baka husband. Waiting for the girls to gear up, Temari walked over to Reynard and petted his head. Leaning down, she whispered to the fox. How long has he been fighting? Reynard looked up to meet her gaze. Not long, Temari-sama. I ran here as fast as I could. Temari ruffled his fur gently. You're a good friend. Looking over to see the girls done, she straightened back up. Reynard, take us to him. Reynard dipped his head and led the 4 kunoichi out of the house and to the woods at a run. Naruto peeked his head around the trunk of the tree he was sheltering behind, then jerked back, kunai barely missing his face. As he jumped up and launched off the tree to another position, 2 clones moved forward and incinerated everything in the direction the kunai was thrown from with combined Gukakyu and Daitapa Jutsu. Ha, you missed shithead. The kunoichi named Tayuya yelled. Growling in irritation, Naruto began placing explosive tags as he looped back towards where he believed the Sound Nin were still tracking him. A flash from the corner of his eye caused him to kick off the tree hastily and he was forced to Kawarimi with a nearby clone to avoid being impaled by another of the spider guy's arrows. Creating a few more clones, he retreated behind another tree, while his new clones spread through the trees nearby. Focusing on the explosive tags, Naruto waited until a nearby clone was dispelled then detonated the tags. He formed a vicious smile when he heard Sakan yelling in pain. Creating a clone, Naruto dispelled it to pass silent orders to the rest of his clones to try to eliminate the gray-haired team. A scuffing sound from nearby got his attention and crouching he silently stalked towards the noise. It was with some relief that he found Reynard crouched low to the ground and ready to spring. Reynard. Naruto-sama. So, back up? Naruto asked casually. Reynard turned and began to slink away. Yes, this way Naruto-sama. Temari-sama sent the disturbed girl to get help and brought Ino-sama, the girl that smells of lavender and the girl that smells of sharp metal. Carefully following behind Reynard, Naruto mentally translated that into Sakura, Ino, Hinata, and Tenten. Body moving on autopilot as he followed Reynard, Naruto began comparing what he knew of his opponents and the strengths and weaknesses of his backup. Temari was much like him, far stronger than her rank would make her appear, but she specialized at long range. Ino was a pretty standard genin kunoichi without her clan jutsu and she didn't have the right support for the ones she knew. Tenten preferred long range, but as a member of Team Guy, it was likely she had a repertoire of close range techniques and knowledge at her disposal. Naruto smirked as he patted a seal on the leg of his pants. He wasn't looking forward to the property damage, but he was positive that the Sound Nin would hate him for giving Tenten his last book of explosive tags. He frowned when he thought of the last member. Hinata was pretty tough when she had to be, but she was a close-range fighter and he was worried about her lack of confidence. Shrugging it off, he decided that he would have to just believe in the girl. He just hoped she didn't have one of those fainting fits. Everyone said she was fine and not sick, but Naruto was skeptical. The girl fainted all the time, how could she possibly be just fine? Reynard led Naruto into a small clearing and they found the girls waiting. Temari stepped forward and examined her husband. His clothing was a shredded wreck, and she could see traces of blood in some of the slashes. Reckless Baka, she mentally sighed. It disturbed her greatly that part of Naruto's fighting style was a willingness to take a hit if it gave him an opening to attack. So, who and why are you fighting Naruto? She asked with a frown. Naruto shrugged. I don't know. He admitted. There were 4 of them and they answer to Orochimaru. Temari's frown twisted with rage. 3 shinobi and a kunoichi? She asked.
When Naruto nodded, Temari let out a stream of curses that rattled her friends.
I was right, it's the sound 4. They're Orochimaru's personal bodyguards. They would have been there when Orochimaru killed my father.
The other leaf kunoichi looked at her with sympathy, but Naruto cocked his head quizzically.
Temari-chan, I thought you didn't like your father much?
Temari dug her nails into her palm to keep from lashing out. Yes, she'd told Naruto that she hadn't liked her father much, and it wasn't his fault that he didn't understand why his death made her angry.
No, I didn't, but he was still my father. Temari paused and tried to think of a way to explain it. Even if I didn't like him, he was still precious to me because he was family. Naruto nodded. Okay, I understand. So, how do we deal with our guests? A string of explosions rang out from the trees, causing Naruto to frown.
They're headed this way, and my explosive clones didn't get that Sakan guy. Gazing around the clearing, Naruto felt a plan form.
Alright, Temari-chan, you and Reynard should deal with the spider guy. He seems to rely on webs and arrows, so your wind attacks should deal with him, especially with Reynard adding fire to your attack. Ino, Hinata, Tenten, take the kunoichi. I think she is the one controlling these 3 ogre things, but her attacks use a flute.
Tossing Tenten a book of explosive tags, much to the bun-haired girl's delight, Naruto continued with his plan. I figure that since the 3 of you cover all ranges, you should be able to take her. Just watch out for those ogre things.
Ano, Naruto-kun. Hinata said quietly. Will you be okay by yourself? Naruto flashed the girls a foxy grin. I'll be fine, Hinata-chan. I've almost had this guy, but his teammates kept getting in the way.
Naruto jerked his head up as a nearby clone dispelled.
They're close. Spread out and look for your targets.
The Konoha shinobi fanned out through the clearing and waited for the Sannin. Naruto's battle plan was pretty good for the limited amount of time he had to set it up, but there were factors he hadn't counted on. One such thing was his wife's temper.
When the Sannin reached the clearing, Tayuya laughed.
Sakan, Kadamaru, look, the shithead brought some whores.
Seeing Temari's slightly protruding stomach, she pointed it out. Oh, check it out, what kind of kunoichi lets themselves get fat? Naruto froze when he felt an immense wave of killing intent sweep across the clearing.
Looking over at his wife, he could have sworn her eyes were burning green pools of fire.
Kami, note to self, never comment on Temari's pregnancy weight.
Disregarding her assigned target, Temari swept her fan completely open while biting her thumb. Swiping the bloody digit across the top of the fan, she channeled an immense amount of wind and swung as hard as she could.
Kuchios, Karakiri Mai.
She yelled, summoning Kamatari to ride the wind and slash through everything in his way. Everyone on the battlefield stopped to watch the carnage as Temari clear-cut everything near Tayuya, throwing the sound kunoichi into the air.
As the girl fell, Temari sent another wave of wind to juggle Tayuya in midair.
Having bought a precious second of time, Temari once again swept her fan forward.
Kamaitashi no Jutsu, she called, surrounding Tayuya with a visible funnel of wind. Reynard, Temari barked. Give me fire.
Reynard braced himself and thrust his muzzle forward.
Kitsune Bai.
A thick stream of bluish fire shot from his mouth, the recoil pushing him back slightly. The foxfire mixed with Temari's wind funnel, and even Naruto on the other side of the clearing flinched away from the resulting heat. Mercifully, Tayuya's screams were short-lived as the inferno quickly consumed her body. Releasing her jutsu, Temari watched in satisfaction as Tayuya's charred skeleton dropped to the ground and shattered. Turning towards the remaining 2 Sannin, she shifted her open fan behind her and placed her free hand on her hip.
Either of you have something to say about my weight?
She snarled, looking smugly satisfied when the terrified shinobi shook their heads no. Seeing an opening, Naruto dashed forward at Sakan, drawing his kodachi from its storage seal. Aiming a slash at Sakan's undefended neck, Naruto cursed when the gray-haired shinobi once again grew an arm from his back that parried his blade with a kunai. The impact of the blade shook Sakan from his momentary trance and he swiftly countered, spinning around with a multi-legged kick. Barely avoiding the attack, Naruto jumped back and began to circle, looking for an opening.
Kidamaru! Sakan called. Release your second state.
The unclean aura around Sakan intensified and Naruto watched in horror as the Sound Nin transformed in front of him. The Sound Nin's pale skin darkened to a sickly brown as he grew fangs and horns. Yells from his friends told him that something similar was happening to the other one, but he refused to take his focus off his opponent. He needed to finish this one before he could go help the girls. Resealing his kodachi, Naruto formed the seal for his favorite jutsu.
Kage Bunshin no Jutsu.
He called, forming a small platoon of clones. While capable of creating clones without using hand seal, using the signs allowed him more control over the jutsu. Standing back, Naruto watched his clones surround the transformed Nin while he watched for weaknesses he could exploit. He gave a small grunt of surprise when another body almost identical to the first pulled itself from Sakan's back.
Clone?
No, that's not a clone, he thought as the two began dispelling his clones with ease. Wait, if they're separated, I should be able to hit him. Moving in with the next wave of clones, Naruto waited for an opportunity. The two Sound Nin were hitting every clone that came close, but they were dispelling the clones and looking for the next target. They wouldn't be expecting a dispelled clone to continue attacking. Seeing an opportunity, Naruto dashed at the back of one with a Rasengan spinning up in his hand. He felt a brief moment of contact before the figure in front of him dissolved into his arm. An intense flare of pain brought Naruto to his knees and he coughed and spit out blood. A horned head poked out of his shoulder and laughed at him. "You pathetic leaf trash." It hissed as the other figure looked on with a sneer. "You're dead now, boy, and your little whores are next. I will destroy your body from the inside out." Naruto began to laugh painfully and both figures narrowed their eyes. "What's so funny, trash?" The Nin standing in front of him snarled. Forcing himself to his feet, Naruto smirked. "Team didn't tell you much about me, did he?" Raising his hands in front of him for a ram seal, Naruto dug deep for the Kyuubi's chakra. Who in their right mind would try to enter the body of a Jinchuriki? Channeling enough of Kyuubi's chakra to use his initial Jinchuriki state, Naruto smiled with grim satisfaction as the head on his shoulder began to scream in pain. Naruto was knocked off his feet when a mass launched itself from his shoulder and began to liquefy upon hitting the ground. "You Kan! No! What did you do to him?" Sakan screamed at Naruto as he watched his brother's body melt. Struggling upright again, Naruto's answer was cut off by an inhuman scream from the other fight. Glancing over, Naruto saw a berserk Ino surrounded by a chakra shroud pulling her fist from the remains of Kidamaru's chest. He cursed when he noticed the line thread of chakra connecting him with Ino and hastily stopped drawing Kyuubi's power when Ino turned on the other kunoichi. The connection cut, Ino dropped like a rock and Naruto turned back to his opponent just in time to catch a punch in the face that knocked him back against a nearby tree. Before he could react, Sakan slammed into him and began rapidly striking him with wild punches and kicks, screaming about his brother. Unwilling to draw on the Kyuubi's power due to Ino's earlier reaction, Naruto had no choice but to weather the attacks until Sakan made the mistake of drawing his arm back too far for one of his punches. Reacting as the fist hurtled towards him, Naruto slid to the side, grabbing Sakan's wrist with his left hand and twisting it to throw Sakan off balance. Forming a Rasengan in his other hand, Naruto drove the humming ball of chakra clean through the Sound Nin's head, resulting in a spray of blood as Sakan's skull exploded. Dropping his hold, Naruto let the body fall limply and staggered over to where the girls were crowded around two forms on the ground. Getting closer, Naruto noticed that Hinata was using medical jutsu on Ino's prone form and Temari was trying to heal a twitching Reynard. Did Kyuubi's chakra do this to both of them? He wondered, seeing similar burns on both of his friends. He was unable to continue his line of thought when the stress on his body caught up and he dropped to the ground. His struggle against unconsciousness ended with the sight of a worried Temari extending glowing green hands towards him. In the forest, a golden pair of eyes watched as Tsunade and an ANBU squad arrived and took charge of the situation.
Kukukukuku, most interesting Naruto-kun.
The form said, melding into the ground. It was foolish of me to try to kill you, those genes of yours are something to be prized. A steady dripping woke Naruto and he cursed when he realized he was in his mindscape. Pulling himself to his feet, he staggered towards the fox's cage, wondering why the Kyuubi had dragged him there. Approaching the bars, Naruto saw the Kyuubi grinning at him from within its cage. Such a weak mortal you are, Ningen. All this power and you still almost lost.
Bah, Naruto retorted.
Get stuffed, Fluffy.
Those cursed seals of Orochimaru's are really bad news. Indeed. Kyuubi replied.
They twist and multiply the hatred of those who carry them until it is the only thing the carrier feels. Matters not if it is sealed, all would fall prey to it. This includes the Uchiha boy, and the one he hates most now is you. You should kill him before he becomes more of a threat to you. Naruto leaned against the bars, letting them bear some of his weight. I'm not going to kill Sasuke just cause you say so, Fox.
He said tiredly. I'm willing to believe you about the seals, though.
When they used that advanced form, I could feel that hatred you mentioned, but Sasuke is still a citizen of Konoha.
Kyuubi chuckled darkly. You'll regret your mercy, boy. Naruto sighed. Probably. He admitted. Doesn't mean I'm going to listen to you though. Reminds me, what the hell did you do to Ino-chan? Kyuubi snorted. I did nothing, Ningen.
You, however, you drew on my power and allowed me to operate outside your body.
Naruto slammed a fist into the bars. What the hell did you do, Fox? Kyuubi lifted his muzzle from where it rested on his paws with a snarl.
Do not presume to speak to me like that, mortal.
I tire of you, leave me.
Cursing the fox, Naruto released himself from his mindscape. No point in trying to talk to the team when he's like that. Waking back to his body, Naruto noticed he was alone in his hospital room. Reaching up, he winced as he tore out the floor and then slid soundlessly from the bed. Opening the bathroom door, Naruto was grateful to find some of his clothes and quickly got dressed. Sitting to pull his pants up hurt, so he figured he hadn't been down too long. Anything more than a day and the bruises would have already healed. Ghosting through the quiet corridors, he caught sight of Inoichi sleeping on a bench outside a room, so he poked his head in curiously. His somewhat cheerful mood from sneaking around the hospital came crashing down when he saw Ino swathed in bandages laying on the room's bed. Crossing to the sleeping girl, Naruto lay a quick kiss on her forehead because her hands were bandaged.
I'm sorry, Ino-chan. He whispered as he turned and left the room.
Making his way towards the exit, Naruto stopped when he heard raised voices coming from Tsunade's hospital office. No, you are not checking him out of the hospital tonight.
Tsunade yelled at a visibly angry Temari. Tsunade-sama. Temari replied in a strained polite voice. My husband was not injured in the fight, just exhausted. She carefully stressed the word husband. When he wakes, he should come home with me and rest there. He does not like hospitals, you know that.
Knocking on the door, Naruto called attention to his presence.
I appreciate you looking out for me, Bachan, but I'm fine. What happened to Ino-chan and Reynard? Both women looked at him and noted that he was already dressed. Tsunade sighed and opened her desk drawer, pulling out a small bundle of bills. Handing it over to a gleeful Temari, Tsunade rolled her eyes at Naruto. Gaki, you just cost me money.
I wasn't expecting you to try to escape for at least another hour.
Sitting behind her desk, Tsunade waved at Naruto to take a seat next to Temari. Ino is all right.
She was sleeping last time I saw her. Reynard I handed over to Hana Inuzuka for treatment after we got you settled in here. I gave her orders to report if anything happened, so in this case, no news is good news.
As for what happened to them, I'm not sure.
From what the girls told me, when you used Kyuubi's power against your opponent, some sort of chakra thread linked you with Ino and Reynard and both went berserk.
Tsunade eyed Naruto when he flinched. Got something to add? Naruto nodded unhappily. Fox-teen pulled me into my mind after the fight. He told me that I somehow allowed him to operate outside my body. I'm not sure if I believe that. I saw Ino-chan before I stopped using the fox's power and she was surrounded by chakra, but it wasn't red. Tsunade said, considering the information. That actually makes sense given Ino's injuries. Her chakra coils were strained much like what sometimes happens with new Mednin that haven't gotten used to transferring power yet. Intriguing, but for now, don't draw on Kyuubi's power if Ino or Reynard are anywhere near you. Better add Inoichi to that list as well, Bachan. Naruto replied quietly. He's been in my head near the fox, even if not as close as Reynard and Ino were. Good point. Tsunade agreed. So, you ready to leave with Temari then? No. Naruto said crossly, folding his arms across his chest. Turning to Temari, he gave his wife a mild glare. I'm somewhat upset with Temari-chan at the moment, so I'm going to go cool down some before I go home. Temari felt shocked and hurt. Me? Why are you upset with me? Naruto drummed his fingers on his arm in irritation. You are always reminding me about watching my temper, Temari-chan. He replied flatly. You've told me that it is probably my single greatest weakness. Temari nodded uncertainly. She did tend to remind him of that, but why was he angry? We had a battle plan, Temari-chan, and when that kunoichi insulted you, a very basic insult, you flipped out and completely discarded the plan because you were angry. But it worked out, right? Temari asked hesitantly. This time, sure, but if I have to watch my temper, so do you. Naruto said, pointing a finger at her. Standing, Naruto walked towards the door. I'm going to go check on Reynard and then I'll head home. I'll see you there, Temari-chan, he called over his shoulder as he stalked out. Temari looked at Tsunade. I guess he really is angry, she said quietly. Tsunade gave her a sympathetic gaze. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Naruto isn't one to really hold a grudge. I think most of that was fueled by him being upset over Ino and Reynard being hurt. Just give him some time to cool down, apologize, and this will be behind you. Temari gazed at the hands in her lap sadly. I hope so, Tsunade-sama. It seems wrong for him to be angry with me. Swanda gave Temari a knowing smirk. I'm sure. Now, go home. Temari stood and bowed, then exited the room without saying anything, causing Tsunade to massage her temple wearily. Ah, the pitfalls of young love. Damn, I forgot to tell Naruto he was training with Kakashi this week. The look on his face would have been priceless. Naruto gently rubbed Reynard's ears and looked over at the Inuzuka vet hovering nearby. So he'll be okay, right? Hana nodded while skimming through her patient's notes. Yeah, he had some nasty burns and I was surprised to find such a developed chakra system, but he should be fine with some rest. Naruto carefully gave Reynard a hug, trying to avoid aggravating the fox's injuries. Hear that, you'll be fine. Reynard lifted his head slightly to glare. Yes, I told you that, Naruto-sama, now please let me rest. Naruto chuckled as he stood up and ruffled the fox's fur. Yeah. I got it. I'll leave you alone. Thank you. You can be very trying at times, Naruto-sama. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the comment. Really? Forgive me, Naruto-sama, the painkillers they gave me are quite nice. Naruto turned an amused glance on Hana. You got my minion stoned? Hana blushed slightly in embarrassment. Leaving the room, Naruto couldn't help but grin at Reynard's parting shot. I've told you before, Naruto-sama, I am not a minion, I am a vassal. There is a difference. Naruto chuckled. Yeah, keep telling yourself that. He laughed harder at the annoyed snarl from the room.
For all the things Reynard pulled on him, some measure of payback was expected. He was surprised when just wandering around he found himself near his home.
Groaning, he decided to go and get this over with.
He shouldn't have snapped on Temari, but at the time he was just frustrated. Steeling himself, he entered the house and striped off his sandals.
"I'm back," he called.
He paused, puzzled, when Temari came gliding down the stairs dressed in a formal kimono.
"Welcome home, husband,"
she greeted him with a deep bow.
Straightening, she crossed the room and linked arms with Naruto. "If it is to my husband's pleasure, I have prepared a light supper."
Naruto was internally freaking out.
What sort of twisted punishment game was this? Temari-chan, what the hell are you doing?
He saw some fire in her eyes when he went off her prepared script.
What does it look like, baka? I'm apologizing for my actions. But. Oh. Wait, what? Naruto stammered out. Temari laughed at the clueless expression on his face.
Tsunade was right, only she didn't have to apologize for Naruto to have forgiven her. He really was such a sweet man, not a grudge holder. In a way, his calling her out on her mistakes earlier excited her. She didn't want a doormat for a husband, and now she knew that he would oppose her if he felt it was important. Jerking the startled boy closer, Temari laid a scorching kiss on him.
"So, what should we have first?" she said with a smirk. "Dinner or dessert?" Naruto glanced at the table, then back at his wife. Slowly a wide grin grew on his face. "I think I'm in the mood for something sweet."